What's going on, Chicago? And welcome to another edition of the Barely There podcast on Four Star Chicago Sports. I am Brandon, and over there is Kyle DePlacy. Kyle, how you feeling?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
Not too bad, guys. I am filling in tonight for Sean, and we are unfortunately short Jay as well, so it's just going to be the two of us, which is okay. Kyle, me and you will get him through this. We want to talk a little bit about the Bears defense. After all, the focus has been paid to the Bears offense over this offseason. Not only is there some, I want to talk, Kyle, more importantly about, is there somebody more importantly that can make Ben Johnson a little more comfortable after all this Caleb being comfortable talk? And guys, the five players or coaches who have pissed you off the most in your Bears fan tenure, and then five more than bold fantasy predictions, guys. All that and more after this. Once again, guys, thanks for joining us on the Barely There podcast. I am Bears on Brandon DePlacy. That's dialed in, Kyle DePlacy over there. I point your way, but then when I watch it play back, I'm always pointing the wrong direction. So you're over there. I think that's going to be correct. And like I said, guys, Sean and Jerry are enjoying themselves a little bit of vacation right now, so we hope they're having fun. Me and Kyle are going to cover this one tonight. But Kyle, let's get started and dive right into the Dennis Allen thing. The thing I want to ask you first and foremost about Dennis Allen, Kyle, is with all the focus on the Bears offense over the offseason with the acquisitions they made in the coaching staff, especially in Ben Johnson, the new head coach, and the players on the roster, they focused heavily in the draft on offense. Is Dennis Allen the most important hire to this Bears team over the offseason?
Yeah, I believe he is, and I believe that's why Ben Johnson was talking to Dennis Allen before he was talking to anybody else. We all know that reports have come out that he was talking to Dennis Allen before he was officially named the head coach of the Chicago Bears. I think that Dennis Allen was the most important person in this entire coaching search, and I think Dennis Allen was the guy he locked up the quickest of the bunch.
Well, we talk a lot about what's going to make Caleb Williams comfortable, what's going to help Caleb Williams reach that peak of success that we're all hoping for, that elite franchise quarterback play out of Caleb in a new offense under Ben Johnson. Is Dennis Allen the piece that makes Ben Johnson the most comfortable, Kyle, considering this guy, even though he did fail technically as a head coach, he was a head coach prior to this, and he's the only coach on Ben Johnson's staff that was a head coach.
Yeah, I think not only does he know how the NFL works in terms of being a head coach, but he also has been coaching football for a very long time. And this is a guy who, I mean, he started as Texas A&M head coach in 1996. I think this is the kind of guy who's seen basically everything football has to offer. I mean, this guy started in Texas A&M in 1996 as a coach. He became a graduate assistant at Tulsa from 2000 to 2001. He was a secondary coach for the Falcons till 2003. He was a defensive quality control coordinator from the Falcons till 2005. Defensive assistant with the Falcons in New Orleans Saints from 2006 to 2007. He was an assistant defensive line coach. Then he became a secondary coach with the Saints, then a defensive coordinator for the Broncos, and the head coach of the Raiders. And then the senior defensive assistant for the Saints, then defensive coordinator for the Saints. Then obviously, as you all know, he became the head coach of the Saints from 2022 to 2024. And now he is the Bears defensive coordinator. Let's get to know Dennis Allen a little bit here, Brandon. So in terms of his defensive success, and this is just in recent history because I'm not going to go all the way back to his college days, but in recent history, under Dennis Allen, the Saints ranked top 10 in points allowed and yards allowed in his final two seasons as the defensive coordinator and his first season as the head coach. The Saints were ranked number 31 overall defense before Dennis Allen got to New Orleans, and by the time he left, they were a top 7 unit, or before he left, they were a top 7 unit for 7 straight years. Allen is known for his aggressive play calling, and all of Allen's units are particularly successful on third downs. Allen is known as a great teacher, one of the best player developers in the NFL, and he is known for going places and improving the defensive unit numbers overall. In 2023, Patent Analytics ranked Dennis Allen as the best play caller in terms of coverage and market deficiency with team constraints. So basically what that means, Brennan, and this was amongst all coaches, Brennan, this is not just defensive coaches, but the Patent Analytics ranked him number one in play calling in terms of coverage and market efficiency with team constraints. So basically how well you could stop the opposing offense, even though you have holes in your roster. So basically, what they're saying is, even though there was holes in the Saints roster, Dennis Allen used play calling to stop the other team, or
To
at
make
least,
up for the lack of
yeah, the
talent.
deficiencies. It's exactly what it is. And obviously, we know the Bears. I think their defense is getting better. I think they had some great offseason additions, guys like Grady Jarrett, even their draft, like Shamar Turner. We don't know what Ruben Hippolyte's going to be, but there are still some holes in this defense. So it's good to have a guy like Dennis Allen here. I mean, this is a team that clearly is not the number one defense in the NFL, but I think if everything goes their way, he could probably sneak them into the top 10. But that would be like everything going right, very low injury rate. Allen is not known much for blitzing. In 2024, the Saints ranked 25th in blitz rate at 20.6 the year before that. They ranked 20th at the rate of 22.5%. However, Allen is big on making teams guess who is coming in passing situations. So basically what they're saying is he's very creative in his blitz packages. He attacks with scheme and mentality more than volume. The players in Dennis Allen's defense play downhill instinctive football. Another thing this article said, Brennan, is basically everybody at all three tiers in Dennis Allen's defense have to be extremely athletic, including the defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. They all have to be guys who can basically play in a position at any given moment. It's not out of the ordinary for him to stack 60 defenders in the line of scrimmage on third down and only send 4, but you never know which 4 are coming. He sometimes sends 5 rushers at the passer and will occasionally bring 6. For the most part, he wants to drop 7 players into coverage, and he plays mostly man coverage. Which players are rushing and which are dropping is challenging to decipher, and that's what makes it hard on opposing offenses. Allen will put pressure on the opponent's quarterback and the offensive line to sort through the crap. Between the aggressive front and the aligned 6 or more players on the line of scrimmage pre-snap, and they use wide-ranging stunts, Allen aims to create chaos within blocking schemes. When it's working, it's a thing of beauty, but it does require versatile defenders on the defensive line, linebacker, and in secondary. Every defensive player is a blitz threat in this defense, even if it means that the defensive lineman has to drop into coverage. So something you don't see much in the NFL, Brennan, he is willing to blitz a corner or a safety, and then a defensive lineman or linebackers have to do more covering than they would normally would in certain defenses. So Dennis Allen makes his money off of being just creative, Brennan. And he's kind of like the Ben Johnson of the defensive side of the football. Like he shows normal fronts. He'll even show 6 or 7 guys coming, rushing the passer, and then he drops everybody back into man-man coverage, and it ends up being 4 blitzing. You just don't know which 4 guys are coming.
I think he's innovative. I think he likes to disguise things as well as Ben Johnson does. I know that he plays basically a deep quarter zone, which means he plays a press man coverage, but then he plays a deep quarter zone. He likes the safeties to drop pretty far back there, and I think that's why it requires an athletic linebacker like Ruben Hippolyte, a guy like that who can run, and I think that's why you're going to see Ruben Hippolyte play a lot on this defense. But Kyle, I want to focus a little too on how important is it to have a Dennis Allen on your staff when you're a rookie head coach?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no way to quantify it, man. I think it's pretty much, if you look back in history, you look back all the first year head coaches, most of them have had a coach with a lot of experience, or even a coach who has been head coach in the past on their staff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The thing about Dennis Allen in this particular situation, Brendan, is he's going to basically be in control of the defense. That frees up Ben Johnson to worry solely about the offense. Now, I think as time goes on, like you've seen the guys like Bill Belichick become more offensive minded throughout their tenures. I think the goal is for Ben Johnson to basically one day become a guy who can oversee the entire team, offense, defense, special teams, and help out wherever he's needed. But for right now, for a guy who's learning on the job, the guy who's doing this for the first time in his entire life, I think Dennis Allen is huge, and he's very important to the development of Ben Johnson as a head coach. No doubt about it.
I do as well, and I think Ben's going to obviously oversee this entire team. Unlike Matt Eberflus, Ben Johnson's going to be able to call plays on offense, but I think he'll still be able to oversee the defense. He's not going to be calling plays. He's not going to be making personnel decisions, but he's going to make sure that defense accents what he's doing on offense, right? He wants the two to be coinciding. He wants the two units to complement one another. If he's playing that rough run style of football, I'm sure he's going to want, a lot of pass. And like you said, Kyle, Dennis Allen likes to bring pass rush from the four up front. That's his big thing. He even said it during this offseason. He's not focused on blitz packages right now and what he can do with a linebacker like Ruben Hippolyte. What he's focused on is making the 4 guys up front better at getting into the quarterback. He sent I think it was Javon Dexter selected some players to go down to Miami or to go to Florida, and right, was it Florida?
Yeah.
Right. and kind of honing on their skills a little bit as edge rushers and pass rushers. But I think that Ben Johnson will still oversee Dennis Allen, not the unit in general, but Dennis Allen. But I think Ben Johnson's also going to lean on Dennis Allen when those moments come at the end of a game where you're just not quite sure what to do. Now, I think Ben Johnson's going to obviously prepare himself, unlike the last Bears coaching staff did. He's going to prepare himself for all the situations he might face, and he's going to have solutions for them. But in deciding which solution is the best, I would imagine, Kyle, that he's going to look over to Dennis Allen and kind of, wait for a thumbs up, thumbs down. Doesn't mean that Dennis Allen's going to make those decisions for him, but I think he's probably going to want to know that Dennis Allen's in his corner when he has to make those decisions. I will say this, man. I do believe that Dennis Allen, of all the defensive coordinators that were available this offseason, I thought the two best were former Bears head coach Matt Eberflus and Dennis Allen. I think the Bears got one of the two best guys available. So I think, as well as Dennis Allen being a former head coach that can help Ben Johnson kind of lean on him a little bit with things like that, the experience. Like you said, Kyle, Ben Johnson at least knows that he's got somebody who knows what the hell he's doing with that team. This is not a first-time defensive coordinator. This guy's been above and beyond that. He's been a head coach now, coming back to defensive coordinator position. There's nothing to worry about when it comes to how Dennis Allen is going to call his game. So I think this gives a lot of comfort to Ben Johnson. I think it alleviates a lot of stress for Ben Johnson. It's just another ear also to listen. It's another shoulder to lean on. I mean, there's just a lot of things that Dennis Allen can provide to Ben Johnson that none of the other coaches on this staff can do, right? I mean, Eric Bieniemy's been in line for a head coaching job before. He's done some interviews. He never got it. Antoine Randall is just one of Ben Johnson's tutors, a guy who's been taken under his wing. So, I mean, this guy, other than the positional coaches that just have a shitload of experience, like Dan Rochers, the guys with 40-plus years, this guy is the only guy on this roster who's been in a position that Ben Johnson's in prior to Ben Johnson. I mean, he's the only one on the roster. There is no doubt in my mind that at some juncture this season, Ben Johnson will have to ask Dennis Allen, a question will be asked by Ben Johnson that only Dennis Allen can provide an answer to, given he was a head coach prior in the NFL.
Yeah, and how long, Baron, have Bears fans been screaming for the Chicago Bears to play complimentary football? I think both of these guys, when you talk about Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen, they're notorious for playing complimentary football. I mean, Dennis Allen, even when he was a defensive coordinator before, obviously he became the head coach of. And let me state, Vernon, that just because because Dennis Allen failed as a defensive coordinator doesn't mean he's not, or has failed as a head coach doesn't mean he's not a good defensive coordinator. By all accounts, he is a top 5 defensive coordinator in the NFL. And if you look at his team statistics, every year he was solely just a defensive coordinator everywhere he's been. They had great defenses, and the unit improved everywhere he went. But I think both these guys are well known for playing complementary football. If you look at the Saints, they have an identity. If you look at the Detroit Lions last year, they have an identity. And I think that comes from guys like Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen. And I expect the Bears to establish an identity pretty quickly here in 2025.
Kyle, the Bears acquired a few pieces on defense over this offseason through the draft and through free agency. Grady Jarrett was one of them, who we know is a leader, a veteran in this league. Shamar Turner, who's a guy that's very versatile. They're talking about a guy who can play the one technique, the three technique, even possibly move outside. And then Ruben Hippolyte, the draft pick, who's pretty well known for his 4.39 speed at the position, which is
don't forget about Dale. Dale's
pretty remarkable. Dale,
how much versatile as well.
How much influence do you see in Dennis Allen over the players they've added on the defensive side of football?
Well, not only do I expect to see a lot of influence in their growth and development, especially guys like Shamar Turner and Deo, who's still relatively young, and Ruben Hippolyte, guys who haven't played much football, but I also expect to see the guys that have been here for a long time start to get better, Brian. I mean, like when I read the article about Dennis Allen today, one of the first things it said is Dennis Allen has known his biggest strengths are player development and getting the most out of his players, putting his players in positions to succeed. So I think if you're a defensive player coming to the Chicago Bears, I think you're excited to play under a guy like Dennis Allen, especially if you got a guy who just got drafted like Ruben Hippolyte or Shamar Turner. I think this is best case scenario for you, because by all accounts, every time Dennis Allen's gotten a guy, especially guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, who people are like, this guy's kind of a tweener. We don't really know where he's going to play. Whenever those type of guys get to Dennis Allen's defense, he finds a spot for him, and they make a career out of it. So
yeah,
I expect all of their numbers to improve from last year dramatically, and I expect this to be a better defense than it was last year, no doubt about it.
I guess what I'm asking you is, how much influence do you see on the acquisitions themselves? Are these Dennis Allen guys? Are these players fitting the mold that Dennis Allen requires to play in his defense?
I would certainly hope that he had Dennis Allen's approval, but at the end of the day, I think Ryan Poles decides who on the market is the best bang for your buck, who's the greatest value at the position. So, I mean, but I would hope it's a cohesive decision, right? You would hope that if Ryan Poles is adding these defensive players, he goes up to Dennis Allen and is like, hey, I want to know guys who fit your system or your scheme.
Yeah, what are you
And then
looking for?
maybe Dennis Allen gives him 5 or 6 guys or a certain type of player. Like I want a guy at 290 between 6'4" and 6'5", and then he goes and looks at the free agent options and decides to take one. I do think there's one guy in particular, Brandon, that's going to benefit from Dennis Allen, and that is Deo. And I wish I could say his last name, but Deo's been a guy who, by all accounts, in the NFL since he's been drafted, has been a guy who has potential. Right? That's all we hear about: potential. I think Deo in a scheme like this is going to improve dramatically. I expect Deo to get somewhere in that 7, 8, 9 sack range. We all know he had 3.5 sacks last year. But I think Dennis Allen's really good at putting these guys in the right positions and finding out where their strengths and weaknesses and utilizing those. And I think that Deo is the perfect candidate for that because we've all heard that this guy has the body type. He has the intangibles to be a good player in the NFL. He's just been played out of position or he hasn't gotten it yet. And maybe it's between the years. I don't know. But I think if anything, Dennis Allen, who's by all accounts one of the best player developers in the NFL, is going to get the most out of this guy. And I expect him to be a much better player in Chicago than he's been in Indianapolis.
Yeah, they were hoping the same for Austin Booker as well. I do think that Dennis Allen's
The
had a
problem
lot
with
of
Austin,
influence.
Brendan, let me ask you a question. Is, obviously Austin Booker wasn't a choice. Dennis Allen didn't choose to bring him here. That was before Dennis Allen was part of the Chicago Bears. If you look at Dennis Allen's defensive linemen in the past, you look at him on the Saints, you look at him everywhere he's ever coached, the Raiders, it seems like Austin Booker's a little undersized for the type of player he's usually used to putting on the end. So if Austin Booker can't find a place on this defense this season, if they can't find a way to make him fit into the scheme, he could be a possible trade piece going in next year. Because if you look at all of Dennis Allen's defensive ends, Austin Booker would probably be the smallest he's ever had.
Well, it's been reported they did have Austin Booker put on some weight. I don't know how much. I think it was.
Yeah, I think right now they said he's gained about
12 pounds.
5 or 7 pounds. I think he's up, but that's still really under what Dennis Allen's used to. I mean, Dennis Allen's used to those 260, 280 guys. I think Austin Booker's 255 right now. Even with the 7 pounds he gained, I think he's somewhere around 255 pounds.
So I think
it's going to be interesting to watch.
If you look at the defensive players that have been added since Dennis Allen was hired, I think he's had a lot of influence. I think these kind of are Dennis Allen guys. I think, it was pretty widely reported, Kyle. I mean, the one thing every Bears fan is aware of is Ruben Hippolyte was primarily Dennis Allen's choice. And it was reported, I don't know if you heard this late, Kyle, I was reading yesterday, it's reported that Ruben Hippolyte talk was starting to get louder and louder prior to the draft, and the Bears actually believed that if they didn't take Hippolyte where they did, he was going to be selected in the 4th round. There were a lot of teams that started to show a lot of interest in Hippolyte. So I think that was reported by like Kevin Fishbane or something like that. That Ruben Hippolyte was not going to be there after the draft was over. There was some chatter around this player after they watched him run at his pro day. But I do think the Ruben Hippolyte pick was a Dennis Allen pick. I mean, that was pretty widely reported.
Yeah,
but
if you watch the draft, the War Room, it's pretty obvious that was a Dennis Allen selection.
Yeah, and I do think that the Shamar Turner pick, like I said, he's very versatile. Dennis Allen loves players that can play any position on the line. That felt very Dennis Allen-y to me too. Shamar Turner is the guy who I think will eventually play all 4 positions on this defensive line. Grady Jarrett, I think I would imagine Dennis Allen and Ryan Poles talked, and Dennis Allen stated, I just need some leadership on this defense. We did the captains on Monday, Kyle, and we did select some players like Jalen Johnson and Montez Sweat, who were already existing on this roster, but the reality was they were just lacking leadership top to bottom last year. And you said it yourself, it's not just the coaches who are accountable for this. These players were on the roster last season. They have to be held accountable as well. So you think that the Grady Jarrett was probably a little bit influenced from Dennis Allen. He probably said to Ryan Poles, I wouldn't mind, once he saw I was in the market, I wouldn't mind signing this guy. I need a leader on my defense. I do think Dennis Allen has had an impact and some influence on the guys that have been acquired since he's been on this team. But let me ask you this, Kyle. Like you stated before with Austin Booker, this defense is built on Matt Eberflus. I mean, this defense was built between Ryan Poles and what Matt Eberflus required. And Dennis Allen's just basically taken it over. Now, they run a very similar scheme. I'm sure that's why they made the hire in Dennis Allen in a 4-3. But how much will it impact this defense's ability to finish as a top 10 unit that Dennis Allen did not select the majority of these players on this team?
Honestly, I really don't think it will much at all, Burns. To be honest with you, they really actually are very similar. They both want guys who are not only versatile but very aggressive. If you read these articles about Dennis Allen, the word aggressive comes up more than any other word in there. And if you talk about guys like Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, Javon Dexter, who's one of the most versatile players in the NFL, I think he could honestly play the one technique, the three technique, or the end. It doesn't really matter. And if you talk about some of the guys that he's brought in here, I mean, obviously, I think Dennis Allen, part of the reason that Grady Jarrett is here is because Dennis Allen had to play against him for the last 3 years and saw him every single day or every single game that they played the Saints, and he knows what type, or that they played the Falcons. He knows what type of player he is, and that's why I wanted him here. I think he's versatile as well, Brennan. I think Grady Jarrett could play the one or the three at any given moment. I think this defense that the Bears have put together here, although it wasn't built by Dennis Allen, is built for guys like Dennis Allen. You need a bunch of guys who are versatile and a bunch of guys who are aggressive, and that's the type of players the Bears have drafted for the last since Ryan Poles has been here.
Yeah, and John agrees with you. He says, I think we'll see Dexter play a lot of the nose tackle, the one tech. And I listen, you said something that I want to talk. I am praying that I see if this unit, right, if the Montez Sweat, Deo, Austin Booker, Hardy, whoever it is that fills that fourth spot, if these guys can't establish enough pressure from the outside of the lineman, I would love to see Javon Dexter play on the outside a little bit, play over the tackles. I think that the guy is just if he fixes the thing that we all know he's been struggling with, Kyle, since he's been drafted, his ability to get off the snap, get off the line. If he can explode off the line a little bit, we know that he has the upper body strength to overpower pretty much any player across from whether they're a guard, a center, or an offensive tackle. But with those offensive tackles standing a little higher up, I think if Javon Dexter can get into their core and catch them off guard, he could probably put those guys flat on their ass. I would love to see Javon Dexter play a little bit on the outside. I know a lot of people say he's only a defensive end and a 3-4. I don't agree with that. I think when you got a guy who's probably one of the strongest in the NFL when it comes to upper body strength, you want to play him against just about anybody on any line, right? I think that he'd do a phenomenal job against those tackles on the outside, man. Because like I said, they are giving a little less anchor, right? Or they're giving a little more. They're standing a little higher than your guards. They're not as anchored. So I think Javon Dexter could probably barrel through those guys. But do you think because Dennis Allen is who he is, like you've said, he uses guys in different roles, he disguises things, same things look different, different things look the same. Could he maybe move some of these guys around in roles we've never seen him playing?
Well, 100%. I mean, and that's kind of what Dennis Allen's known for. We just talked about that Dennis Allen is not known for blitzing a ton, but he is known for disguising blitzes and bringing guys from places you don't normally expect them. I expect to see a lot of stunts like Vernon. When you talk about Javon Dexter's playing defensive end, I don't necessarily think he has to start on the end to play defensive end every once in a while. They can stunt him outside in the middle of the play, move him around, kind of switch him and Montez Sweat or switch him and Deo, and he can ultimately end up on the outside trying to get into to rush the quarterback. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see a lot of Javon Dexter moving over the line. At the end of the day, I know a lot of people don't love Javon Dexter, and he'll always be compared to Jalen Carter, but I think Javon Dexter will end up being the best player on this defensive line at some point this season. I think he might already be there, but he's certainly going to get better. I mean, the guy's really young. He's only been in the NFL for 2 years, and he was being coached by guys like Matt Eberflus. I expect Dennis Allen to help him reach his ceiling, and I expect him to get a lot more from him. But yeah, I think you're going to see some guys play out of position a little bit, Brennan. I think the first few weeks in particular, you're going to start to see guys, Dennis Allen, try to get to know these guys and get to know their strengths, know where they're played their best, to get to know their weaknesses, and you'll see him move them around a lot. But once these guys start to get comfortable in certain situations, I think you'll start to see this defense become more consistent, and you'll start to see these guys, you'll see like certain timeshares start to get more consistent. Like say Javon Dexter's on the field 60% when week one, it might be 40%. You don't know, but the more he gets used to this roster, the more consistent this defense will become. And people, like you said, Brennan, you said Matt Eberflus is kind of the guy who built this defense, and now Dennis Allen's been handed it. But I expect this defense to have better numbers under Dennis Allen than it did under Matt Eberflus. So obviously, I expect these guys to fit his scheme.
Well, I think there's one thing that these players, the one aspect that this roster already contains that I think fits Dennis Allen's scheme is the physicality of the corner.
Scottish Bear.
I mean, these guys, and Scottish Bear says huge impact. The difference is Flus plays zone, Allen's aggression, which defense will first. Yes, Dennis Allen is known for playing more man than he is zone. He does still play his zone, but it's not that soft zone like Matt Eberflus did, where you're giving 8 yards right off the snap. These guys are going to press. That's Dennis Allen's thing. He wants big physical corners that hit you in the mouth at the line, so it's not so easy to get into your route, right? But he does play he does play, like I said, a quarter zone with his safeties. He likes his safeties to play deep. Another big thing about Dennis Allen's defense, Kyle, is he does not like to give up big plays, right? I mean, this is what he hangs his helmet on. We don't give up big plays. We can give the chunk plays. We're not giving up the 50, 60-yard touchdowns, the ones that the Amon Ross St. Browns, the Justin Jeffersons can burn you on. So that's another good thing. Dennis Allen is going to focus on on big plays, and I thought the Bears defense struggled with that a little bit last year, especially when they started to struggle against defending the run. But another thing that outside of these corners, man, another thing that I think Dennis Allen could really flourish with, Kyle, is, and I really want to know what you think. What is the potential for a guy like Ruben Hippolyte? Because I was reading earlier today when we talked about we were going to do a Dennis Allen show. I started to do a little homework on what he sees, what he wants in a linebacker, and this guy is probably the only guy. I mean, he's a tweener between maybe a strong safety and an outside linebacker. He's the only guy that really fits Dennis Allen's preference. Tremaine Edmonds is a big dude. TJ Edwards isn't super fast. These guys are physical, and they're hit you in the mouth kind of players. But like I said, Dennis Allen wants guys that can play a lot of coverage at that linebacker position. Is this carve out a bigger role for Ruben Hippolyte than we all expect, Kyle?
Well, real quick, Brian, I want to say what's up, Scottish Bear, John, Breaking News, Bruce. And then I've never seen this name here before, Bernie. Maybe you have Anthropology 2000. Thank you so much for joining us, man. We appreciate it. He says,
2000.
Yo, what's going on, Anthropology? How you doing, man? But yeah, Brian, I think that's why Ruben Hippolyte was brought here. You know, you heard.
I think I've seen Anthropology before, but I think that's for you, Anthropology. We appreciate you joining the show, man. Please hit that like and subscribe. If you guys have anything to talk about, or if there's anything regarding Dennis Allen we haven't covered yet, please throw it in the chat, guys.
Yeah, Brandon, like you talked about earlier, you know, he plays a lot of zone coverage, so you're going to have one-on-one matchups. That means that and especially since we talked about earlier how sometimes he disguises the fronts, he'll put 6 men at the line of scrimmage, and then once the ball is snapped, he drops everybody back, and there's only 4. But sometimes he'll make defensive linemen drop into coverage, and a safety will go blitz the quarterback. So you're going to see guys like Ruben Hippolyte have to cover tight ends and running backs and slot receivers a lot. And I think he's capable of doing it because by all accounts, he was the fastest linebacker in the draft. What I don't want to see is Ruben Hippolyte inside the tackles a lot because not only is he undersized as a linebacker, but I just don't think he's that great at shedding blocks. I think, he subbed a long time ago. Sorry, Anthropology, man. I just don't recognize this name. I don't know, maybe he changed his name or something. But we appreciate you joining the show, man.
No, he was here a couple weeks ago, I believe, man.
Yeah.
When you threw the 2000 at the back end of that, I was like, that sounds familiar for sure, man. But we appreciate you being here, anyways, man.
Yes,
we appreciate
feel free to chime in the conversation, Anthropology, man. Yes, I think Ruben Hippolyte's going to be in coverage a lot. I think that's pretty much what he was brought here for, Brennan. If you listen to the War Room conversation they had after he was drafted, you heard Dennis Allen say, we have speed, a lot more speed. You kept hearing that word. I think the reason he brought him here is to cover those faster pass catchers that maybe a Tremaine Edmonds and a TJ Edwards are capable of covering.
Let me ask you this, Kyle. Well, first off, breaking news, Bruce says, I'm looking at Sewell and Tyreek Stevenson under Dennis Allen. Yeah, Kyle, you already stated last week that you expect Tyreek Stevenson to make major strides. We know he has the physical ability to play. He just needs an ass kicker, man. I mean, this guy just needs his head in the game. He is one of the best, especially in the red zone, right? Tyreek Stevenson always seems to come up with a big play, the bend don't break mentality. But Sewell, that's an interesting one, Kyle, because we just talked about Ruben Hippolyte's speed. Noah Sewell was the NCAA leader for blitz rate percentage when he was drafted. Is this a guy that you're going to see getting after the quarterback? Is this a guy that you're going to see a little more usage out of? He's pretty much had none since Ryan Poles drafted him. We know that Ben Johnson stated that he likes him so far in camp. He's had an eye on him. He's impressed. Are we going to see more Noah Sewell, and will that carve? Are these guys, Kyle, Ruben Hippolyte, Noah Sewell, going to be on the field alongside Edmonds and Edwards? Because we haven't seen a lot of that since Eberflus was the defensive coordinator of this team. It was basically 2 linebackers, 1 nickel. And you know that Dennis Allen already wants, the one thing we heard him state is he wants Kyler Gordon on the field more often. So where do these guys fit, man? Does this mean Edwards comes off the field?
No, I mean, you'd like the Bears to try to refrain from being predictable, but I think if Noah Sewell's on the field, that means that they're probably bringing Noah Sewell, the quarterback. He's a bigger guy. He's a guy who can play in between the tackles. He's also very well known for rushing the quarterback. And like you said, in college, he was an absolute beast at rushing the quarterback. I think he's kind of a specialist. I don't think you can use Noah Sewell all over the field, but for certain situations you can. And obviously that does make the defense more predictable because then you know why he's here. But why he's on the field. But I do think if the problem with Noah Sewell is we just for the lack of playing time, we have no idea what he is. I don't even know what he is. Like I don't know what the Bears projections or predictions are for him. I don't know where they want him to play. I don't know anything about him. I don't even know. Maybe they decide he's that Brian Branch type player and he could be like a hybrid safety linebacker, although he's a really big dude. I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, I have known nothing at all about Noah Sewell. I mean, I think he's played like 8 snaps for the Chicago Bears since he was drafted. But yeah, I mean, if the guy has talent and Dennis Allen sees that talent inside of him, he's like, there's a way in which I can get this talent out of him and use him on the field. I'm all ears, man. I'd love to see it because if not, it's just another wasted draft pick by the Chicago Bears. But I'd certainly think that Noah Sewell could be, if you look at his numbers in college, just based off of the type of player he was, could be a pass rush specialist. It just sucks because then you're kind of getting a little predictable when he's on the field, right? If you know he can't cover anybody and he's only on the field to rush the quarterback, then you're becoming more predictable. But we'll see. It remains to be seen. I think you'll see a lot of this stuff, a lot of this mix and match stuff, Brennan, a lot of this trying new things in preseason and training camp. So I think by the time the week 3 of the preseason comes, you'll know where Noah Sewell's position stands on this team.
Yeah, and I want to say I'm with you. Scottish Bears says Grady Jarrett will have a huge impact on this D-line. Listen, a lot of people, I like the Grady Jarrett pick. I thought it was a little overhyped by the Bears fan base, but I will say this. I think Grady Jarrett's on the back end of his career, or the back end of the hill, I should say. But I do think between Joe Thuney and Grady Jarrett, you've just acquired leadership that you just didn't have on this football team before. And you want those guys in the trenches. Joe Thuney's going to command the attention of that offensive line, especially when they go to the sideline. Kyle, this is a guy who coaches players a lot. He's in players' ears, especially young guys. And I think Grady Jarrett serves the same purpose on the other side of the line. We heard Montez Sweat say, when he talks, I listen. I didn't think I could learn any valuable lessons from players at my age at this juncture of my career. Grady Jarrett's teaching me a lot. I don't know if that's just something Montez Sweat feels he has to say, but I believe it to be true if Montez Sweat says it. He seems like a pretty genuine guy. I think Grady Jarrett's going to serve as a leader, a captain on this football team. I think he's going to be Dennis Allen's kind of commander under the command, right? I think he's going to be Dennis Allen's second in charge when it comes to guys on the field. So, yeah, I'm with you there. And Kyle, I want to say this. We heard Dennis Allen talk about Kyler Gordon's ability, which is great. Dennis Allen was immediately able to identify the thing that we already know. Probably your best player on the defensive side of football outside of Jalen Johnson.
At least the most athletic. The most athletic player.
Jalen Johnson, and then probably Kyler Gordon. He's probably a top 3 he's a top 3 nickel in this. What's going on, Phil? Top 3 nickel in the league. I think he could finish as the number 1 nickel in the league after this year. But he didn't really. There's nobody else that Dennis Allen, Kyle State is going to be on the field more often than not. He's going to get more snaps and more minutes on the field than he has been in recent years. Is that a concern for you? Do you think that there's somebody else that Dennis Allen? Do you think that Dennis Allen doesn't see that in any of these other players, like the Javon Dexters? Do you think that there's nobody else where he thinks, wow, this guy's potential and the talent he has should dictate a much bigger role than he's had on this team?
Well, real quick, Brendan, Anthropology says TJ Edwards will be a key to implementing Dijon's defense, smart linebacker. Yeah, I think he's going to play a very key role in this Bears team. I was happy about the extension. I know some Bears fans weren't, but I like TJ Edwards a lot. I think he's one of the most underrated linebackers in the NFL, and I can't wait to see what he does under Dennis Allen. But no, it doesn't concern me at all, Brendan. I think the reason that Dennis Allen talked about Kyler Gordon so much is because Kyler Gordon, that nickel role is always that guy who kind of plays like a hybrid safety linebacker corner role. And I think that in the past, you've seen Dennis Allen get real creative with that type of player, that his nickel.
He's to do it all.
Or his smaller outside linebackers. And I think he just saw a lot of potential in the athleticism and the diversity of Kyler Gordon. And he's like, man, I've used guys like that in the past and made them such better players and made them so versatile. I think this might be the best guy I've ever had the opportunity to work with in terms of using that guy in this role. So I think he's just excited about doing things he's done, the same things he's done in the past, but with a more athletic player. I think that's why he brought up Kyler Gordon's name when he was talking about this roster. And I agree with him, Brendan. I mean, if you go back and watch when Kyler Gordon was drafted, they'll show those videos of him dancing, and a lot of people are making fun of him because it's kind of like
he's a ballet dancer.
Yeah, like ballet dancing. But I mean, you have to be incredibly athletic to do that stuff. And here this guy is. 2 years later on a football field, he seems to be one of the most athletic players in the field. And Kyler Gordon's just one of those guys where it seems like no matter what they ask him to do, Brendan, he does it very well. And I think that's what Dennis Allen is excited about. I think that's why he brought his name up in that interview.
Scottish Bear says Ruben Hippolyte disguised blitz will speed along the coverage will be Allen's mind. Whether he will be able to execute is another matter. Yet, outside of the physical attributes, guys, there's some concern for Ruben Hippolyte when you look at his collegiate career. He had one sack over 5 years, and he had one pass deflection, no interceptions over 5 years. I mean, when it comes to the coverage, when it comes to the blitzing, he didn't stand out. He was just a pure linebacker. So it's going to be interesting to see if what Dennis Allen has in mind, even if what Dennis Allen has in mind for Ruben Hippolyte, if he's got the capability to do it. We hadn't really seen that, but Maryland is not a defense we're all watching when the college season is going along. Um, I
One
want.
thing about Ruben Hippolyte, Brennan, is the fact that he is undersized and he's so small and fast. I think that Dennis Allen sees potential to sneak him in between the tackles and go after the quarterback. Like, most of the time you get undersized linebackers.
Up the middle blitz.
Yeah, most of the time you get those undersized linebackers and they're going to blitz the quarterback up the middle. Once they get blocked, they're pretty much done because it's really tough for them to off blocks against guard centers and tackles because those guys are so big. Ruben Hippolyte's so small, but Ruben Hippolyte's the kind of guy who could get lost somewhere in the line. Like the defense really doesn't know or the offense doesn't know where he is because he's so small and could sneak in there. And man, if he gets an open lane, it's like he's shot out of a cannon. I mean, that guy is literally one of the fastest linebackers I've ever seen play football. I think Ruben Hippolyte wasn't my favorite pick in the draft. I made that quite clear. I was obvious about that when it happened, but I think Dennis Allen can find a spot for this guy on the team, and I think he's going to play a very important role at some point. The only thing I will say, Brennan, is you got to be just as patient with Ruben Hippolyte as you are with every other rookie in the NFL. This is probably not a guy who's going to come in and be the best player on the field week one, but once he finds a role in this Dennis Allen defense, I expect him to make some impact plays for this team for sure.
Yeah, in regards to players that will have bigger roles starting immediately, man, I was really excited to hear Dennis Allen talk about Kyler Gordon's potential and how he shouldn't be on the field only when a nickel is required. If Kyle Gordon's got to be on the field in another position, I think he should do that. Guys, this is no disrespect to Jalen Johnson. I love Jalen Johnson. He's the best player on the Bears defense, but he is a cornerback through and through. He's a true corner. He's locked down. He's a great tackler. He's not a guy you're going to be rushing the quarterback with. He doesn't have many sacks over his career. I think
that's tough because he plays so far on the outside. It would be really tough to blitz Jalen Johnson because he's always on the outside.
Yeah, and we saw Matty Reflus liked to use Brisker. He liked to use Byard. He liked to use even Tyreek Stevenson had a couple of good blitzes. But I do think that Kyler Gordon has been barely unleashed for his potential, Kyle. I think that there's a lot more in there. I think that Kyler Gordon could be utilized as one of the best premier defenders in the NFL, not just at his position, but overall. I think this guy could finish as a top 10 player in the NFL on the defensive side of the football. I think he's a top 100 player already, but I think he could be a top 25 player on defense in the NFL. And I think the Bears committed to him with that contract extension. It shows that Dennis Allen liked this guy a lot when he became the defensive coordinator of this football team. I'm excited to see what becomes of that. Kyle, is there anything else about Dennis Allen outside of the fact that he was a former head coach? He's going to help Ben Johnson. He's going to make Ben Johnson comfortable. He's probably got a lot of knowledge and a lot of advice.
Well, Brennan, let's get into where's your ceiling and your floor, because that's what that's why I wanted to talk about Dennis Allen and this potential of this defense under a new defensive coordinator, a guy who's obviously more aggressive than Matt Eberflus. So where do you have their floor and their ceiling?
Well, I have the pass rush as somewhere between like 16 to 20 as a unit, but I do believe that this defense in terms of coverage, I mean, you're looking at one of the best secondaries in the NFL, and Dennis Allen always has done a good job, like you said, Kyle, with the strong secondary. They're players that fit his scheme when it comes to the secondary, especially. They're aggressive guys. I think this defensive unit can finish somewhere between 8 and 14.
Yeah, the reason that I am so high on Dennis Allen and so high on the potential of this defense and the potential to finish in the top 10 is because, something Bears fans have talked about for the last 4 or 5 years, Brennan, is even under Matt Eberflus, who's by all accounts a good defensive coordinator, right? Maybe not a great head coach, but he's been a good defensive coordinator in the NFL before. He was still pretty bad on third downs for a big chunk of his career here. Dennis Allen, by all accounts, is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL in terms of specifically 2 third downs. So if the Bears are better this season at getting teams off the field, because it felt like the Bears could never get anybody off the field. Brennan, there felt at times under Matt Eberflus, it felt like when the other team was on 3rd and 8, they were almost thinking to themselves, right, we've got the Bears exactly where we want them, 3rd and long. Like, we know we're getting this shit. I think Dennis Allen's going to change that. I think the Bears get the teams into 3rd down often, they're going to get them off the field often, and it's going to give the offense more opportunity. I think the Bears defense, the potential, Brennan, the ceiling would be number 7 or 8. And I think their floor, like if they have an absolute disastrous season, ton of injuries. It takes Dennis Allen longer than we thought it would to put his fingerprints on this defense. I'd say their floor is probably somewhere around 19-20.
Well, one thing that you related to, Kyle, that I think for 100% for sure is going to occur this year, guys. And I think there's some guys in the chat that are in between our show and CSP. They're talking about Luther Burden getting paid. Illinois Jones says, I wouldn't pay Burden a dime. Unfortunately, you have to, Illinois Jones. I mean, he was a second-round pick. He's going to get paid. He's not going to have much leverage in regards to what he gets paid. But I don't think there's any contract issues here. I have every second-round pick on this football team is yet to sign. Every second-round pick in the NFL is yet to sign. This is just
we went over just real quick, guys, just to go over this. We went over this a couple of weeks ago on the Barely There podcast. We went over what's happening with the second-round picks. So basically, what's happening, guys, is the Texans made Higgins the first second-round pick ever to get fully guaranteed contract, right? That was in the past, that was only reserved for first-round picks. The Texans did something outside of the norm and made Higgins the first fully guaranteed second-round pick ever. The Browns, who were stuck in between with what's the linebacker's name the Browns got burned?
Carson Schwetzinger,
right? So number 32 was a fully guaranteed contract, right? Because he's the last pick in the first round. And then the Texans paid pick number 34, Higgins, a fully guaranteed contract. So the Browns put their hands up. We're like, well, number 32 got a fully guaranteed contract, and pick number 34 got a fully guaranteed contract. We have to give Schwetzinger a fully guaranteed contract. The problem is after that, Tyler Shook of the New Orleans Saints, who has predicted himself that he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints at some point this season, has gone to the Saints and said, well, I'm going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. These second-round picks have gotten fully guaranteed contracts. How come I can't get a fully guaranteed contract?
Yeah, that's the domino that needs to fall.
Yeah. So Tyler Shook was the 40th pick of the draft. So that is the guy that needs to be signed so the teams who picked guys before 40 can determine what they're going to pay their second-round pick. So it's all waiting on Tyler Shook of the New Orleans Saints. That's how this all got started. He's the guy holding up the line. But, Vernon, like you said, this isn't just a problem that's specific to the Chicago Bears. The reason the Bears are mentioned so much in this conversation is because the Bears are the only team that had 3 second-round picks. So they have the most players unsigned of this draft because they have the most second-round picks. But I believe that once Tyler Shook signs his contract, whether it be fully guaranteed or not, the rest of these guys will follow suit shortly thereafter. I think it'll be within a matter of weeks. Every second-round pick in the NFL will be signed, and Luther Burden included. He's going to be signed by the Chicago Bears. I don't know exactly how much. I don't know what's going to happen, but he's going to be signed by the Chicago Bears.
And
Vernon, we got a new. I don't know if you. I'm not good at this, so, but my memory is not what it used to be. So, Jojo Loco 5150. He says, I hope the show blitz often and bring it only when needed. It helps open lanes for D-line if they act like the blitz is coming. Yeah, we talked about that earlier, Jojo. I think that, and thank you so much for joining the show. We really, really appreciate it. But
yeah, we're not sure if you know new Jojo Loco, but if you are new to the show, please hit that like and subscribe. And for every new member of the show, every new viewer, everybody new member of the chat, thanks for you, my friend. Thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate
we talked about how Dennis Allen is not known for blitzing a lot. He finished the last couple of seasons in New Orleans as the 20th and 27th ranked blitzing team in the NFL, but he is known for using unique and blitz packages and disguising his blitzes. So yeah, we agree with you. And I think Dennis Allen agrees with you. You don't have to blitz a ton, but you have to make the offense think you're going to blitz a ton. And then the more creative you get, the more it opens up those lanes for the defensive line. I agree with you 100%. Thanks for joining the show, man. Sorry, Brendan.
In regards to the second-round pick, real quick, guys, because like I said, I think some of you guys in the chat are in between 2 shows right now. We're not really doing the second round. We already kind of beat that up. We were pretty far ahead of that. I think this, man. None of these guys are holding out. And holding out is different from not signing, right, Kyle? Holding out is when training camp starts, I'm not going to fucking be there. I'm not practicing. I'm not touching the field. None of these guys have proposed this to the Chicago Bears. Luther Burden's also dealing with an injury on top of the fact that he's unsigned right now. So there's just some questions there looming over Luther Burden. But I'm always in defense of the players, Kyle. You know me. I don't typically defend the owners, the team. Tyler Shough does not deserve a fully guaranteed contract.
No, he doesn't.
Whether or not he's the starting quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. That guy's probably not going to have the most successful season. I thought this quarterback class was pretty weak to begin with. Cam Ward didn't get a fully guaranteed contract. He's the most NFL-ready player, probably the only NFL-ready player in this draft who's playing at that position. Tyler Shough just needs to sign whatever it is he's being offered and let the rest of these dominoes fall.
No, and Burden, I agree with you. I get sick of hearing billionaires complain, so I usually don't side with the owners. But, they got to a point where they came to a term agreement with the players, Association, and the Players Association is the one who signed the paperwork. So they agreed with this that the first round picks would get guaranteed contracts because you can basically presume that most of them are going to be really good players in the NFL, right? So, but when you start getting to the second and third round players, some of these guys are question marks and it's kind of a crapshoot. So for me to, as an owner, to be like, here, let me give you a $18 million guaranteed, even though I don't even know what type of player you are, and you might not be here in 2 years. In 2 years, we might cut you off this roster because the transition from collegiate level to the NFL was too hard for you, and you can't make it in this league. Now you got to pay this guy for 4 years, even though he only played for 2. I think that these guys should be honored and privileged to be playing in the NFL. I mean, it's 0.00001% of the population playing football that makes it to the National Football League. They should sign their contracts. They should go prove it on the field and ask for more money in their second contract. Quit your bitching, sign your contract, get out there and work your ass off. And I think that's going to happen with the Chicago Bears. Brendan, you've seen Ozzie Trapilo out there. You've seen Shamar Turner out there. The only reason that Luther Burden wasn't out there was because of the soft tissue injury. We've talked about this 100 times. And just the fact that all these second-round picks are holding out and Luther Burden had this injury, the media wants to make it a bigger story than it actually is. Luther Burden is not holding out. He's just hurt and he can't play right now. And eventually he will be on the field. I expect him to be on the field day one of training camp. I expect all these second-round picks to be signed day one of training camp. And I think Luther Burden has potential to be a very, very good Chicago Bear for a very long time. So I'm going to 100% support Luther Burden getting on the field as soon as possible. So let's get that injury healed up and let's get him out there.
Scottish Bear says exactly. Calvin says, I agree. Scottish Bear says exactly. It's the agent's dispute with the NFL. Only 3 second-round picks have signed their contracts. Yeah, guys, I think the NFL fan base is making this into a much bigger thing than I think it is. And like Kyle said, the rest of these second-round picks are waiting on one guy. That's honestly, it doesn't need to be. You don't need to read this on ESPN, guys. Hear it from Kyle. Hear it from 4-Star Chicago Sports. That is what's holding up this whole, like you said, holding up the line. That's what it is. You got a quarterback who's expecting more money than he's being offered because he's going to be plugged into a starting role because of Derek Carr's retirement. That wasn't expected by the Saints. It wasn't expected by Shuck. It wasn't expected by Carr, but it happened. And now they're trying to figure out the best way to deal with it. And until they do, every one of these other second round picks is going to wait. They're going to play the wait and see game. But I do think when training camp comes around and these 3 guys, Shamar Turner, Ozzie Trapilo, Luther Burden, are expected to be on the field, they're going to fucking be on the field. There's no doubt about it. These guys are all excited to be a part of this Bears offense. They're excited to be a part of this Bears team in general. And I'm sure all 3 of these guys are hardworking dudes. We've read all that during the offseason, during the draft. We've read that about these guys. They're going to hit the ground running for sure.
Bernard, real quick, Bears fan for life, Phil says, do you see the Bears defense playing similarly to the Vikings, especially in the blitzbacks? I'm not sure how aggressive Dennis Allen will be with the squad. I don't, Phil. I think Dennis Allen's going to be a lot more
Brian Flores
than Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores,
yeah.
I think he's actually the highest blitzing defensive coordinator in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. And like I said, you guys, the last 2 years in New Orleans, Dennis Allen finished 27th and 20th. So he doesn't blitz a ton. He just uses very unique disguise packages to blitz. And then Brennan, Ron says, help, I've fallen and I can't reach my beer. And then Illinois Jones says,
I wish I could provide you some help.
Yeah, buddy. Man, if I was there, I'd toss you one. And then Illinois Jones says, give me your honest opinion on how likelihood of Jones coming in after injury, missing almost all of offseason, starting at left tackle. Ben Johnson said the starter will be the best pass pro. You guys have heard me say this a million times. I think that spot is Braxton Jones' spot to lose, but I don't think there's a very long leash. Like, I think right now they probably have him penciled in as the starter. But man, if he gets hurt or if he has a bad game and Ozzie Trapilo comes in and plays well, I think that's Ozzie Trapilo's job for the rest of his career. As long as the Bears don't upgrade the left tackle position again, I think that's Ozzie Trapilo's job. I think that's the guy they chose in this draft. They weren't here when Braxton Jones was drafted. They drafted Ozzie Trapilo, and their ideal scenario, their best case scenario, is for Ozzie Trapilo to be the starting left tackle for the Chicago Bears for at least the next 4 years.
And you bring up a good point there, Illinois Jones, and Ben Johnson has harped on this a lot. It's about the pass protection. That was what this unit suffered in the last few seasons. Caleb Williams got his ass kicked last year, guys. It doesn't matter how high Braxton Jones graded as a run blocker. That's not what Ben Johnson's focused on. He said it a number of times now. He wants good pass protectors. The guys they brought in, Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, these guys all graded out really well in pass protection, struggled a little bit in the run side of things. Jonah Jackson especially. So, yeah, I think it's going to be about pass protection. Hey, Braxton Jones can come in here all day and get to the second level and, be that swing guard or that swing tackle. It's not going to help much if he's not keeping Caleb upright, right, Kyle?
Yeah, and real quick, everybody, thank you so much for joining the show. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, please go over to our YouTube page and hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate you guys joining the show. Please continue to leave
Oh yes,
comments, guys.
Scottish Bear.
You guys, we plan on talking about Dennis Allen. You guys brought this conversation in a totally different direction. We love it. We absolutely love it. It makes the show so much easier. Scottish Bear said only one DC could handle. Thank you, Blitz. That was Ben Johnson. Yeah, you guys have said
OC.
this on the pod, or OC. Sorry,
Only
I've
one
said this.
OC.
I've said this on the podcast before, guys. I think Brian Flores' defenses in Miami have given up 30.7 times. Ben Johnson's responsible for 4 of them.
Minnesota.
So Ben Johnson's responsible for 4 of them. So, yeah, he's obviously the guy in the NFL who seems to have figured out the Vikings defense the most. And, Vernon, just a quick update. The Cubs are now down 3-0. This is one of those bad Shota Imanaga starts where all those fly balls he pitches are going out of the park. They have 3 solo home runs against Shota Imanaga today. So this is what I've talked about. What the Cubs can't realistically.
That's a glass
do.
half full there, though.
They don't have an ace. Shota Imanaga is not an ace. He's number 2.
There's 3 solos. Could be worse, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Bruce, breaking news. Bruce did break some news during the show. Kyle Tucker and Pete Crow Armstrong will be starters in the All-Star game. It's really surprised me, man.
Congratulations.
Say I got the shaft. That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's very rare that a guy
as good as anybody could play right now, especially, man.
Very rare that a guy leading the league in RBIs does not make the All-Star team. I think the reason being, Brennan, is just because he's a DH and he doesn't have any position on the field. I think that's why they probably.
I think that's absolutely it. And if that's not the reason, then the MLB's just.
All right, Brennan. You want to get into some of these bold fantasy predictions?
Yeah, moving on from Dennis Allen, guys. We both, like we said, project this defense to be a lot better. Well, to be better than it was. But Kyle, I did want to say this. I expect the injuries on the defensive side of football for Chicago Bears to come down drastically. They suffered injuries at almost every level last year. Montez Sweat missed time. Billings went out. Brisker went out. I believe there was another. Was it Tyreek Stevenson? There was some fill-in from some corners there too during the course of the season. I don't know if it was Jalen Johnson. I mean, they lost a plethora of players, guys.
Yeah, they had players in a in-game basis that missed. Like Jalen Johnson had to step off the field a couple times here and there. Like every team in the NFL has it. So yeah, they did have a lot of backups playing at one point.
I think that Ben Johnson's offense and the ability to move the chains and keep the guys. Do you remember in the first quarters of all last season, every first quarter, the Bears would just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. Early in a game, when your offense can't stay on the field and your defense is constantly playing in the first quarter, it wears them the fuck down. And then throughout the course of the season, when these guys are on the field all the time, they just can't stay healthy. That's just not an expectation in today's NFL. So if this offense can move the chains, the offense can stay on the field and balance that time of possession out a little bit, the Bears defense is gonna excel. And that's just another thing that's gonna make them a better unit than they were last year, especially towards the end of the season, guys. And if they defend the run well, if they can stop the run, guys, this Bears defensive unit can be a really, really, really good one because these guys can cover. Just not forever, man. They need some pass rush, and they need it up front, and they need it from the 4 guys that Dennis Allen's talking about all off season.
Yeah, but like you said, the more they sustain drives on offense, the more the defense is off the field, the more you expect them to stay healthy and stay fresh and not suffer so much and not be so tired all the time. But Brennan, let's get into some of these bold fantasy predictions right now, man. Let's
Bears Fan for Life says they were pathetic last year. You're exactly yeah, I agree with you, Phil.
And
I mean,
chat,
there's no other way to say it.
Chat, this is what we'd really like to hear from you when we're talking about these bold fantasy predictions. We're going to give you our fantasy predictions. We want to know whether or not you think this is even realistic or if it's just way out. There's no chance in how this is ever going to happen.
These are not strictly Bears predictions, guys. These are league-wide fantasy predictions. We've done a lot of Bears stuff. I think we've just about hammered home as much as we can about the Bears fantasy potential. So, yeah, we these are not bold, guys. These are outlandish, okay? These are fantasy. I don't know if you guys out there are fantasy managers. If you are, take some advice from this guy right here next to me, Kyle. I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm pretty successful in fantasy as well, but 2 guys that have been doing this for a long time, 10 plus years. So these are the things, guys, that you're not, and the Yahoo ratings, the ESPN ratings aren't going to project. These are the things that might help your team kind of cross the finish line at the end there, guys. So Kyle, go ahead and start with your number 5. Start with your number 5.
All right, my number 5. You guys remember, we're not saying this is going to happen. We're saying, is there a chance that this could happen this season? All right, Bruno, my number 5. Brock Bowers will not finish as a top 5 tight end in fantasy football this season. Let me go over the reasons why this would be one of my bold fantasy predictions.
Yeah, that's pretty damn bold.
Yeah, after finishing last season with 112 receptions, 1,194 yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns, and the most receptions among any NFL tight end, Brock Bowers will be entering his sophomore season with a new quarterback, a new coach, and a new scheme. Pete Carroll has never had a tight end finish a season with over 1,000 yards receiving. The closest to ever do it was Jimmy Graham in 2016 when he finished with 923 yards and 6 touchdowns. No other tight end outside of Jimmy Graham under Pete Carroll has ever finished with more than 400 yards receiving in their career. The most decorated tight ends to play for Pete Carroll in Seattle were names like Will Disley, Zach Miller, not the Zach Miller who played for the Bears, you guys, the other one, Luke Wilson, and the aforementioned Jimmy Graham. It's rumored that the Las Vegas Raiders have received trade offers for tight end number 2, Michael Mayer, and that Pete Carroll himself has made it clear that they have no interest in trading Michael Mayer, and they expect him to be heavily involved in this offense. So, Vernon, with all that being said, is there a chance that Brock Bowers does not finish in the top 5 fantasy tight ends?
Yeah, I think there's a chance, and not for any of the reasons that you stated, but those are all definitely good points, man. But I think this offense, guys, was like I said it a couple of weeks on the bare minimum. A mouse couldn't find a gap to run through on this football team, man. It was the worst rush attack in the NFL, hands down. Not a single player of the 5 that plugged in could get any kind of yards on carries, man. I think Ashton Genty's going to be super heavily involved, so the targets will absolutely come down for Brock Bowers this year. So I don't know that he's going to. Would you say Kylie caught 112 balls? There's no effing way that he does that, man. I think Ashton Genty's going to make up about 40% of this offense, man. The passing's going to come down heavily in Vegas. Even though he got his guy in Geno Smith, who does like to sling it, man. He's a gunslinger.
You got Jacoby Myers there, and you drafted Jack Beck. So I expect them to try to have a very balanced offense between run and pass. I just don't know if Brock Bowers is capable of getting 112 receptions in an offense in which Jacoby Myers is still a good player. Jack Beck was brought here for a reason, Brennan. It's not like he was a 7th-round pick. They drafted this guy high.
Dustin said it's pronounced. I didn't know this. Dustin said that the pronunciation is Besh.
Right. Well, Jack Besh was brought here for a reason. He wasn't brought here to sit on the bench. I just think it's going to be really, really tough for Brock Bowers to duplicate the numbers from last season. And like I said, Brennan, I mean, it's just kind of obvious that Pete Carroll, unless he's changed his ways over this year he had off, he's just not a huge fan of tight ends. I mean,
John says definitely bold. He's a top 2 talent. There's a chance, but that would be a shame if the Raiders got that far away from using. I agree, John, because
me too.
Brock Bowers is not the kind of guy you just throw the ball to. I mean, Brock Bowers is a guy you scheme for. It's a guy that you throw a screen in the flat. You get some blockers in front of this guy. You give him a carry in the backfield.
Brennan, he can play running back,
wide receiver, reverse, end arounds. Yeah, you just want. If I'm the coach of the Vegas Raiders, Brock Bowers is getting the ball however I can do it. If Geno Smith isn't able to do it himself, I'm finding a way for that guy to get the ball. So yeah, that is pretty bold because Brock Bowers is probably going to get more usage even if he's not getting the targets.
Well, Bert, not only is it bold because not only was Brock Bowers tight end number 1 last year, him and Trey McBride went back and forth, but I think ultimately finished number 1. But Brennan, Brock Bowers is projected by all fantasy websites to go in the 2nd round this season in fantasy drafts. For a tight end, that's pretty impressive.
All right, Kyle, I'm going to kind of stay on subject for my first bold prediction. I'm going to talk about bad running games, and we know Vegas was leading the reins on that, but I think second place had to be Dallas, Kyle. The Dallas Cowboys were abysmal at running the football between Rico Dowdle and once relevant Ezekiel Elliott. There just wasn't much ground there. And obviously, after the Dak Prescott injury, with no ability to run the ball, they just couldn't. They simply couldn't pass, Kyle. And then CeeDee Lamb's always been kind of handcuffed in his career because he's been the only quality pass catcher on this team. He's never had anybody take any attention away from him. As good as he is, no matter how good you are, guys in the NFL, when you're double teamed all the time, it's really hard to be the best receiver in the league. It's really hard to be the best receiver in the NFC, which I projected CeeDee Lamb would have been. But now that they've added George Pickens, Kyle, they've got they've 2 running backs in Alfred Blue and Javonte Williams. I think my bold prediction is Dak Prescott finishes as a top 3 fantasy quarterback. That's my bold prediction, barring health.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly bold, Brennan, because you almost pencil in Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. I mean, those guys are pretty much consistently the top 3 quarterbacks in fantasy every season, barring health, obviously, as long as all 3 of those guys play 17 games. But I think that Dak Prescott could crack the top 5. I think he's due for a really big season. We've seen every time Dak Prescott has a slow season, he follows it up with a huge season. And last year was not a good season for him, so obviously due to the injury. But I think he could crack the top 5. I don't think that Dak Prescott will end up in the top 3, but I do think he could crack the top 5. Now, I expect him to end up somewhere between 6 and 10, but it wouldn't surprise me if he finished number 5.
Real quick, guys, just got an update. USA beat Guatemala in the CONCACAF game. It looked like they're about to give that one away. It was 2-0. In the 80th minute, Guatemala scored, made it 2-1, but the USA did hold on to that victory. I've been keeping my eyes on this guy since they got a new coach. I love the World Cup. I love watching USA soccer. Anthropology says this, Kyle, and I know we're on the fantasy subject, but we gotta address it. Colson and Burden will barely play this year. Why does polls draft lazy, greedy, injured punks? I wouldn't say I don't know that there's any validity to either one of these guys being lazy. Anthropology. I haven't read that. Declan Doyle has made a point to say that Colston Loveland's not only a really hardworking guy, but he's the kind of guy that gets chippy after the whistle. I mean, he blocks.
I mean, this guy worked on it. This guy grew up on a farm. I think lazy.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense,
he grew up
Anthropology,
a
but
farm raised
I think
guy,
he's
got
probably the
cornbread
opposite of
or
lazy.
corn-fed
Now,
guy.
yes, he was injured. He had his shoulder rebuilt, and you do have to question why Ryan Post continues to draft guys like we saw the Tevin Jenkins experiment didn't work out too well. He had a broken back when they drafted him.
Was that Ryan Post a draft pick?
No. I'm just saying, like the players that the Bears have drafted who have had injury issues in the past, it hasn't worked out well for them.
Well, yeah, and Shamar Turner is on this list as well, guys. These are not the only 2 guys. Shamar Turner had a surgery coming into this season as well.
Yeah, and what's really unfortunate for Shamar Turner is that should have been, Brennan, by all accounts, I've read many articles about that. That should have been a pretty typical standard procedure, and the surgeon is the one who screwed that up, and that he had problems after the surgery, a lot of infections, so on and so forth. So, unfortunately for Shamar Turner, that should have been something he was in and out, but the surgery obviously went awry and things went wrong.
Practice.
But, I mean, I think part of the reason they do that, Anthropology, is because generally players like that, like you talk about Luther Burden, Colston, or Shamar Turner, they're projected to be drafted higher. So what he's doing is probably drafting them off of their ceiling, saying like this guy had potential to go in the top. Yeah, this guy had potential to go in the top 15, and here he's sitting at number 40, 45, 50, whatever it may be. And then we know you guys like Luther Burden, before the season last year in which he had some 600 yards receiving, he had the 1,200-yard season, and he was projected to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. I think what they're trying to do is catch lightning in a bottle, and I think this coaching staff is smart enough to catch that lightning. So I hope both these guys work out. I really do. I hope both these guys work out.
Well said, Ron says, hold on. Ron says people think Kmet will be traded, but they don't know that Ben wants a 2 tight end set. Yeah, Ben Johnson's pretty well known for being a 2 tight end guy. He likes the 12-man personnel. I do think though that Cole Kmet could still, and I'm not in regards to the trade, Cole Kmet could still play your tight end 1. Well, and what Kyle was just talking about, the ceiling of these players, Colston Loveland has the potential to plug in as a wide receiver in a lot of ways, guys. You can play outside the numbers. You can play inside at the slot. I mean, Colston Loveland's going to be used in more ways than just one. So even with the 2 quality tight ends that we project the Bears to have, Cole Kmet's probably still going to be that primary tight end. Well, Colston Loveland is going to be used just about everywhere. I think Ben Johnson.
Yeah, and I think it goes without saying that Colston Loveland was drafted purely off potential because he never really had a huge breakout season in college. But you guys, like we've talked about on the show 1,000 times, you have to trust Ben Johnson, right? Ben Johnson's the coach we all wanted. He's here now. This is the guy who's going to be putting these guys in positions to succeed. I think Colston Loveland will be better here than he was in Michigan. But
looks like Seiya Suzuki just got some runs on the board. Our RBI double. The Guardians were leading 3-1. Now it's 3-2. Like I said, man, Seiya Suzuki right now is playing out of his fucking mind, dude. I mean, this guy is playing. Yeah.
He's really good baseball. The move for him to go from right field to DH was the best thing the Cubs have ever done. Bad props to Quick Counsel for that one. All right, Brennan. I'm going to get into my number 4 here. You ready?
Yeah.
And I know this one's going to be particularly a question for you because, guys, let me tell you, Dustin Jones and Vernon Duplessis are not big fans of Justin Fields. But my number 4 bold fantasy prediction, Brennan, is Justin Fields will finish as a top 5 fantasy quarterback in 2025. Let me get into the numbers why here. In 2022, which was the sophomore season, Justin Fields finished as quarterback number 9 in fantasy football. Fields played in only 15 games in 2022 and missed most of another game. So basically only 14 games, and he still finished as fantasy quarterback number 9, tied with Tom Brady. Fields finished the season with 1,143 rushing yards on 160 attempts and 8 rushing touchdowns, and he also threw for 2,242 passing yards and 17 pass touchdowns. Through 6 starts in 2024, last year, Justin Fields threw for 1,106 passing yards and 5 passing touchdowns and added another 289 rushing yards and additional 5 rushing touchdowns off a very low amount of carries, by the way, guys. 5 rushing touchdowns off not that many carries. In 2024, if Justin Fields had finished the entire season, he was on pace to throw for 3,128 yards and 17 passing touchdowns, and was also on pace to rush for 816 rushing yards. And get this, guys, a monumental 17 rushing touchdowns he was on pace to score last year. So, Brennan, if he has those type of numbers in 2025, as he's projected to be a full-time starter for the New York Jets, do you think he could sneak into the top 5 of fantasy quarterbacks?
No, and this is why, man, because Justin Fields sucks. I think Justin Fields. So get this. I believe I read some fantasy predictions or some bold predictions from a ESPN writer. I forget who it was, or maybe a Bleacher Report writer, that Justin Fields will finish as the number 1 rusher on the New York Jets, and I believe that to be true. I think he will have the most rushing yards on this Jets team, and I still think he places outside the top 5 on the fantasy quarterbacks because the guy can't throw the damn ball.
But Brennan, if he finishes their number 1 rusher, so you're talking about 1,200 yards, and say he gets 15 rushing touchdowns instead of 17. Let's break it down a little bit. Let's be more realistic. If he gets 1,200 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns and adds another 3,000 yards passing and another 15, 20 passing touchdowns, you don't think that gets him in the top 5? I mean, that's like having a running back and quarterback.
I don't think he throws 3,000 yards. I think he throws like 1,800 to 24, man. I think first off, man, I think this Jets team's going to finish pretty bad. I think they're going to be a bottom 5 team in the NFL. I think their passing offense is going to struggle pretty handedly, man. I would imagine Garrett Wilson is on the cusp of wide receiver 3 in fantasy. He was a big letdown last season. That was with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, but I mean, even as a letdown, he had over 1,000 yards. So that's a pretty good letdown.
I don't see. What do you? I just project this passing offense, Kyle, to be one of the worst in the NFL. And I'm sorry, you can call me. I can't buy into Justin Fields.
Where do you put him? Where do you put him? Just out of curiosity.
Fields?
Yeah.
Wow, maybe with the rushing yards, because I think he will lead the Jets in rushing yards between 8 and 14.
Right,
that's,
so
if he starts all season. The Jets might do the same team everything else. Same thing every other team has done. Throw him on the bench.
So if you're in a 10, 12-man league, he is a quarterback number 1. So it's not terrible.
I think Justin Fields is worth drafting in fantasy. I think if you got if you're trying to dictate between 2 players versus matchups, there's going to be games where Justin Fields, we saw what he can do, man. The guy is capable of rushing for over 100 yards and throwing for 100 yards in a football game, man. I think that's possible, but I think the passing numbers outweigh the rushing numbers, man. I think this guy still falls outside the top 10.
All right, let's go to the Brennan's number. Yeah, like we said, these are bold predictions. So that's not me saying I think Justin Fields is going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I'm saying, do you think there's a chance that he sneaks into the top 5 if he rushes for 1,200 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns? I think if he has those rushing numbers and his passing game is better than Brennan thinks it's going to be, which I'm not saying it is, but say it somehow it happens.
Jets are hurting for pass catchers, man.
But I wouldn't put my money on it, but I think it is a possibility in fantasy. Brennan, what's your number?
Number 4, man, and I'm not going to read a whole bunch of stats, Kyle. I'm just going to say it. Ashton Genty will finish with more fantasy points than Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I think that's not that bold, and let me tell you why. Saquon Barkley in his career has been an injury-prone player, and he had a really healthy season last year. Brennan, another reason I think that's not out of the realm of possibility. Did you know, Brennan, that in the last, I think it's 15 years,
Thanks, John. Thanks, Ron. Sorry, Kyle. They're bringing the Justin Fields heat.
Did you know that no fantasy player has repeated as the number 1 fantasy player in fantasy football in the last 15 years? So
I know because I learned it on the Barely There podcast last week.
Yeah. So if Saquon Barkley misses 2 or 3 games, Brennan, maybe even 4 or 5, let's say, and Ashton Genty's healthy all season, I think there's a damn good possibility that Ashton Genty could finish the season as above Saquon Barkley. I don't think he's capable of beating guys like Derrick Henry as well if they stay healthy in fantasy points, but I think he could surpass Saquon if Saquon gets hurt. Saquon
played a lot of football, man, and I think Jalen Hurts is still progressing as a passer in the NFL, man. I think that Jalen Hurts his attempts per game are going to increase a little bit. And Kyle, the Jalen Hurts tush push thing. I mean, this is always going to strip Saquon Barkley of touchdowns, right? When they get inside the 5-yard line, Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy who carries the ball in the end zone. He actually had more rushing touchdowns last season than Saquon Barkley. Most people don't know that, but yeah, Jalen Hurts had 14 rushing touchdowns last year. I think that's going to continue, man. The NFL did not get the tush push banned, so I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a highly effective quarterback in this upcoming season. I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns, and he's going to take some out of Saquon Barkley's pocket.
Yeah,
But
Bernie,
Kyle,
not to go
real
backwards here. Anthropology says Justin Fields is not a QB, but he can score. I agree with the anthropology. I'm not saying Justin Fields is a good quarterback.
yeah, no,
What I'm
there's a lot
saying
of
is,
things. There's
what
a
I'm
lot of
saying
love here.
is, he is one of the best athletes, all-around athletes in the NFL. And I think if he's on the field every play, which we all know the quarterback is, I say every offensive play, I should say, I think he is capable of scoring a lot of fantasy points. I don't think he's going to finish top 5. Let me go out and start that. That's why it's my bold prediction. It wouldn't be a bold prediction if I thought he was going to be a top 5
Yeah,
quarterback.
John S says no way. I can't say it better than Brandon just did. Field sucks. Yeah, I'm with you, John. I listen. The kid, I like the kid. It killed me to watch this guy as the Bears quarterback. He's just another one on that list that we get to see all over the place all year long. Fields was a one read QB. Ron, that's what killed me the most about this guy. He had no progressions and he did it very slowly. He was lazy in his drop back. I don't see that changing. Like I said, the Jets are hurting for pass catchers. This is not a great pass catching unit. I don't know where Fields finds these completions or yards when it comes to throwing the ball. I think the Jets made a really bad decision to make. I mean, the fact that Aaron Rodgers was just the Jets QB and their offense was as bad it was, and now Aaron Rodgers is the Steelers QB, where they just got rid of Justin Fields and benched him, doesn't say a whole lot for Justin Fields. Not a good testament to Justin Fields, guys. But Relentless Mikey says, bear down. What's up, Relentless Mikey? Bear down, man. Appreciate you joining the show. Please hit that like and subscribe. Kyle, my next. Did you give your third?
No, I haven't done my third.
Oh, go ahead.
But you can go first if you want. I don't give a shit.
No, let's keep this order going.
All right, guys. My number 3 bold fantasy prediction: Caleb Johnson will finish as a top 3 fantasy running back in 2025. And here is why the numbers I'm going to give you to support this argument. Although, once again, guys, these are bold predictions, so I'm not saying I think this is going to happen. After selecting Johnson 83rd overall in the 3rd round of the 2025 NFL Draft, Steelers coach Mike Tomlin sang high praise for the rookie running back during a press conference following the conclusion of the NFL Draft. Tomlin stated that the Steelers considered Johnson to be a high-volume type running back and even compared Johnson to Pittsburgh legends Le'Veon Bell and Rashard Mendenhall. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin selected Najee Harris with the 24th overall pick in the 1st round of the 2021 draft, and Najee Harris's rookie season finished with 307 carries, 1,200 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and was utilized even more in the passing game than any other rookie in NFL history, catching 74 receptions on an astonishing 94 targets for a rookie running back in the NFL for 467 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. So once again, guys, Najee Harris's rookie numbers on the Pittsburgh Steelers under Mike Tomlin: 307 carries, 1,200 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, 74 receptions, 467 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns.
God, he had a hell of a season, man. That didn't really.
And I think Caleb Johnson's a better player. So
yeah, I think so too.
Is there a
I
chance?
really liked Najee Harris. I thought Najee Harris was capable of that his whole career.
Yeah, you loved Najee Harris when he was coming out. Is there a chance, Brennan, that he finishes as a top 3 fantasy running back?
Yeah, I think there is. I don't even know if that's that bold, man. I think the Steelers just love to run the ball, and they do have a Tyler Warren over there, so you got a little bit of a handcuff. But I think Aaron Rodgers at the age he is, man, he's not a mobile quarterback. In order to move the chains on the ground, it's going to require a lot from Caleb Johnson.
Well, let me ask you a question, Brennan.
Caleb Johnson was a stud of a running back in college. He's a bulldozer, guys. He's not only got a pretty high top end speed, he's able to run people the fuck over.
Well, I mean, compared to Le'Veon Bell, and
draft Caleb Johnson in your fantasy leagues.
Well, let me ask you a question, then, Brennan. Here's a question. Here's a tough one for you. If you say that it's not that bold of a prediction for Caleb Johnson to finish as the top 3 running back, when you're talking about guys like Saquon Barkley, you're talking about Derrick Henry, you're talking about the best of the best, would that mean he has a better season than Ashton Gianti?
If he's top 3, I don't know, because I think Ashton Gianti can finish top 3 as well. I think Pete Carroll likes to run the ball, man. I mean, I think both these guys can finish somewhere in the top 5. Honestly, I thought Caleb Johnson was a great pick.
What's up, Relentless Mikey?
I actually texted you guys that Caleb Johnson is going to go to the Steelers before the draft, man, and he ended up exactly where I think he's best fit. And like I said, man, this guy was just a beast in college. I liked Caleb. I thought the Bears were going to draft Caleb Johnson, where they took a couple players in the 2nd round. So I like Caleb, man. I think Caleb's he's in the place that he needs to be to succeed. I think that the Steelers are going to do that for him. They're going to put him in the best situation possible. I think he's going to catch the ball a lot. Yeah, I think Caleb Johnson is a good fantasy player to have no matter where he finishes, Kyle.
All right, let's hear your number 3.
All right, number 3, guys. I'm an Illinois guy. I love my hometown kids. Pat Bryant, former Illinois wide receiver, drafted to the Denver Broncos. Broncos will finish this season over 90% owned.
Yeah, I don't think that's a very bold prediction. I think he's going to play a huge part on that team. I think he's a good player, and I think he should have been
It's
drafted
going to
higher.
take some time, though. They've got some receivers over
Oh,
there.
of course. I mean, even Xavier Worthy, who was drafted
He's
in the
number
first round.
4 on their depth chart right now.
Yeah, but he'll supplant himself higher than that at some point. I think even Xavier Worthy was drafted number 1 or in the first round last year. He was a guy who didn't really start making a fantasy and impact team. I mean, he had a really good first week, and then he went like 7 weeks with doing absolutely nothing. So I think all these guys should be expected to be wait and see kind of game or patience with them. But Brandon, at the end of the day, by the time you get into the weeks, the nitty gritty weeks, the championship weeks in fantasy, how many players are injured? So by default, I think this guy will be on 90% of roster for fantasy.
And he's 6'3", guys. I mean, this is a big dude. He's an outside receiver. He's a guy outside the numbers. He's going to go up and get the ball over other people. He was really gritty, high motor in Illinois. I really like this kid, not just because he's an Illinois player. I wanted the Bears to take a chance on him late in the draft. They do still have Marvin Mims over there. They do still have the kid they drafted last year, Valet or whatever his name is. And they do still have Cortland Sutton. So it's going to take some hard work and a lot of time for Pat Bryant to carve out himself a role over there. But I do believe by the end of this season, most fantasy owners will have him on their roster, or most fantasy leagues will have ownership over Pat Bryant.
Yeah. I don't. Of all the ones you've done so far, that's the least bold of all of them. I think
90% owned, man. There's some leagues where I don't know why, man, but it must be like 16 leagues. You ever notice like AJ Brown is like 96% owned?
Yeah,
like,
those are teams.
What 4%? Is AJ what fucking like I don't understand. There was leagues last year where I saw Pat or CeeDee Lamb was like 97%. I'm like, what?
There's very few players that are 100% owned. I think those you're talking about leagues that are like 6, 7, or 6 or 8 players, and it's just the top of the top of the top is rostered. All right, Bern, my number 2, and this one to me, guys, is my least bold fantasy prediction of this show. This is even less bold than Caleb Johnson there. Malik Neighbors will finish as the number 1 fantasy wide receiver in all PPR formats and should be selected in the top 3 picks of PPR fantasy drafts. And I'm going to give you some numbers to back this up real quick here, right, Brennan? Neighbors led all wide receivers in target percentage last year at 32.2 as a rookie, and he was second in target.
Good point, Mikey.
He was second in targets only to Jamar Chase. Neighbors finished with 170. Jamar Chase finished with 175. Brennan, what's most impressive about Neighbors' 170 targets last year is he only played in 15 games last season due to a toe injury and a concussion. What that means is every other wide receiver ranked in the top 5 in terms of targets last season, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London, all played 17-game seasons. Malik Neighbors finished second overall in targets, and he only played 15. So in terms of PPR, Malik Neighbors will finish the number 1 fantasy wide receiver in PPR leagues, points per reception, guys, and should be selected top 3 in all PPR formats, top 3 picks in all PPR formats.
I'm going to agree with that, man. And I don't love – there's a lot of players that I feel like are super overhyped on that Giants receiving core, man. Wendell Robinson, Slater, I think – or Slayton. Is he still on that team? I don't know. But then I believe –
He was almost a Bear.
If I read correctly, after a really good start to minicamp, man, I believe Jalen Hyatt was like carted off the field or something like that. After Dable and Aaron Rodgers were praising this guy, he suffered some sort of injury. I don't know. They haven't really released. I don't know much about it. I don't know how long term it is, but he was starting to play really well as far as Aaron Rodgers was concerned and as far as Brian Dable was concerned. And then something happened. Something. He hit a hiccup. So I don't know. Yeah, I love Malik Neighbors. Kyle, he was on my fantasy team last year. He carried me into a championship. So I think. I lost in the championship, but he carried me in the second place. So I think Malik Neighbors
to a champion. If you say he carried you to a championship, that's accurate.
Yeah, I got there. So I think I would. He's a must own in all leagues. He is a top 5 pick in any fantasy league, even outside PPR. Honestly, man, because the guy gets the ball like 8 times a game. So
with leagues that are touchdown dependent, I would stay away, especially leagues that are touchdown dependent, like standard leagues where you only get
And I know the
like
Giants won't get a lot, man.
4
But
points for touchdown.
don't you think he'll get the bulk?
Yeah, and I think Russell Wilson's a more capable passer of anybody who played for the Giants last year.
Oh, that's
for
who it was.
sure.
Sorry, I kept saying Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson is the guy.
Yeah, I
Who's
didn't
been
want to correct
crazy.
you, but yeah, we knew what you meant. He says,
Always correct.
Brennan Relentless Mikey says, I'll say no on Neighbors because their QB room is a damn mess.
That is
But
true,
once
man.
again,
I don't know if it gets
Mikey,
ugly.
I'm going to say this again. He finished second overall in targets last year with no quarterback, and he missed 2 games. And he was still second in the NFL.
Daniel Jones isn't much better than what they got going on now. I will say this, guys. There's a lot of people out there.
Daniel Jones.
There's a lot of people out there that think Jackson Dart is going to be better than all the quarterbacks in the class from last year.
I agree. I'm one of those people.
No, you're not. Not from. I'm talking about. There's a lot of people who think he's going to be better than the Jaden Daniels.
Caleb Williams I think he's the best quarterback in this draft.
Yeah,
I think he's the best.
Well, that's
better than Cam
that's
Ward.
not. There's a lot of people that say that, but there's a lot of people that think Jackson Dart is the end all. Be like, this guy's the next Hall of Fame quarterback. So, I don't know. We'll see about that, man. But if Jackson Dart ends up getting on the field, because he's got Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson ahead of him, if he ends up getting on the field and he ends up being that guy, sky is the fucking limit for league neighbors. But it is anyways. Like I said, man, this guy should be drafted in your first round, no doubt about it. If he doesn't,
first round for sure.
You're playing in a league with a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing.
I mean, you got to imagine though, top 3 is normally it's going to be Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, right? Like that's for most leagues, that's going to be your top 3, and maybe you can sneak Jamar Chase in there for one of those guys. But it is a bold prediction to say you take league neighbors over the 4 players I just mentioned, and Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, and Jamar Chase. That is that's a bold move. Man. But if it works out for you, that's awesome. All right, Brent, let's hear your number 2.
Javonte Williams, newly acquired free agent on the Dallas Cowboys, will outsnap rookie second-round draft pick Alfred Blue.
Yeah, that's not bold at all.
Round or third round?
It's not bold at all. I think Alfred Blue will be patiently integrated into this offense, and I think they believe Javonte Williams is a capable running back who can take a bulk of the load. I think Jaden Blue is more of a pass catching, gadgety, smaller type running back who's going to be kind of like he'll be used in passing situations, obvious passing situations. But yeah, I think Javonte Williams will have more carries and more touches than Jaden Blue for sure.
Oh yeah, we don't need to beat that one up too much. I don't want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys too much, Kyle. What's your number 1 bold prediction?
All right, guys, this is it. This is one that I am going to live or die by in fantasy football this season, you guys. Ricky Pearsall will finish as a top 10 wide receiver in PPR fantasy leagues this season. And let me give you some numbers as to why I believe this, Brent. Pearsall finished as wide receiver 81 in fantasy in 2024 after missing 6 games due to a gunshot wound. Pearsall finished the season strong with his 2 best fantasy performances coming in Week 17 and Week 18. In Week 17, he held in 8 receptions on 10 targets for 141 yards and a touchdown against the Detroit Lions' weak secondary. He closed out the season in Week 18 against the Arizona Cardinals, catching 6 of 8 targets for 69 yards and a touchdown. Pearsall finished as wide receiver 7 in Week 17 and wide receiver 14 in Week 18. Ricky Pearsall saw his target percentage increase to 22% in the last 2 weeks of the season, which would have ranked him around 20 in fantasy football in terms of target percentage. So top 20 in target percentage in fantasy football. Do you believe, Brennan, that Ricky Pearsall this season not only finishes as a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy, but is the San Francisco 49ers leading wide receiver over Brandon Ayuk and Jennings?
No. Well, over those 2, yes. I believe Pearsall's about to have a really good season. I think he's a really good player and worth a first-round pick. And I think, Kyle, with the departure of Deebo Samuel, this just opened the door for this kid. I did a 5 sleepers on TikTok. He was one of them, man. I think the kid's about to have a really good season. My number 1 bold prediction, Kyle, just happens to be along the same subject. George Kittle will lead all San Francisco 49ers pass catchers in receiving yards.
I'm going to say Ricky Pearsall. I think Ricky Pearsall's legit. He gives me Ladd McConkey type vibes, man. I think this is a guy who's going to be a target machine. He's kind of that Julian
player, though. He's huge.
But he's huge. He's huge in both the middle of the field and outside the numbers. This is a guy who could play anywhere on the field. So I think that's what gives him a leg up on the rest of this. And Vernon, we all know that George Kittle is going to miss 2 or 3 games, right? It's going to happen at some point. He does every single season. Every single season he misses 2.
Relentless, Mikey. You are indeed relentless. He says that's a legit prediction if he doesn't get shot again. Yeah. Well, hey, this guy got shot and drove himself to the hospital, right? Didn't I read that? Like,
He walked into the hospital. He didn't get stretchered in. He walked in on his own 2 feet. So
he got up. He got up out of the ambulance and walked in.
Bernard, John S says Ricky or Pearsall over Kittle. So he agrees with me. Bernard, real quick, I have an honorable mention for bold fantasy predictions. All right, you ready for this one?
I guess.
Xavier Restrepo leads all Titans receivers in yards and receptions in 2025. Undrafted Xavier Restrepo leads all Titans wide receivers in receptions and yards this season.
Coming in hot from wherever that. Where are you, Sean? Wisconsin.
I'm in central Wisconsin. Yes. What's up, boys?
Guys. The original, the OG host of the Barely There podcast, guys. Sean, straight out of his vacation. How you feeling, Sean?
Oh, well, if I was truthful, I would say I'm a little drunk. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm perfectly fine. Oh, well, I heard you guys talking about Ricky Pearsall, and that is my guy, and I have to roll with Kyle on this one because this dude is going to rock this season.
I had him last year in fantasy, and he actually had a couple of, like Kyle said, at the end of the season, he had a couple of big games for me. Sean, give us a bold fantasy prediction. I know you can shit one out of your mind real quick. Come on.
Fuck. My bold oh God, I have a couple of them. Cole Kmet to be drafted.
Doesn't have to be Bears related.
No, it doesn't have to be Bears related. I'll give you one. I'll tell you this. I think personally, and we're going to get into this as we continue to go through these fantasy weeks. I think Rashee Rice is going to finish as a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football. I think he's going to cash a lot of checks for people who wind up drafting him. And his ADP right now is pretty much valued at a steal, but 110%. That dude is going to rock this season for the Kansas City Chiefs. I know everyone's excited about Worthy and all these other guys that are in that offense. Stick with Rashee Rice, man. He's going to rock it, dude. He's going to be a top 10 wide receiver. He's a number 1 for your fantasy team. I promise you this. I promise.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And Sean, Relentless Mikey in our chat earlier said Chiefs wide receivers get injured a lot and arrested a lot. And I will say this, guys. After the arrest of Rashee Rice, this dude is going to play a full season of football. I mean, it's almost guaranteed. This guy's going to be on the field for all 17 weeks.
He is. And you know what? For people that are worried about it, there was an article that was just put out a couple of weeks ago on The Athletic that his case is buried, and it's not even like due to be up in the courts until like November or October, something like that. So that makes me feel even better about taking Rashee Rice. And I'll tell you this, and Kyle, in our league, I'm keeping him. And that's how confident I am. I mean, this guy is going to – he was on pace to be a top 10 receiver before he got hurt in that freak accident last year. So –
and I think, Sean, I think the Chiefs' offense is back. Between Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, and Brashard Smith, the new addition, the pass catcher out of the backfield, this offense is back. The Chiefs just got a whole lot better. They were just in a Super Bowl. I mean, guys, I think the Chiefs are back in the dynasty form for sure.
Yeah, but their division got a lot tougher. Sean, you're getting some shout outs here. Breaking news, Bruce says what's up. Bears fan for life. Phil says what's up. Breaking news, Bruce also said he gives a shout out to PT57, Polish Thunder over there. And then real quick, guys, John S. said in regards to Ricky Pearsall, he ran a go route straight to the hospital.
Oh, my daughter brought back change. I gave her $10 to get ice cream, and I bet her that she wouldn't bring me back change, and she won.
Don't take Sean's advice in fantasy. He's already losing money.
Gotta say hi really quick. Say hi, everybody. All right, get out of here. All right, hey, I love you guys. Peace and love. Bear down. Thank you guys. I'm gonna drop in. Love you guys so much.
Thanks for joining us, Sean. Be safe out there.
Enjoy yourself, man. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you guys.
From me.
Absolutely. Love y'all.